find the money to spend every day. But there is someone who loves you and I more than a rich benefactor, more than a rich mother or father or grandparent, that deposits 86,400 seconds in every day of our lives with one stipulation. You can't bring 1 minute of Monday into Tuesday. You must spend all of Monday into Monday and all of Tuesday into Tuesday. You only have a minute, which is 60 seconds in that particular time. You can't refuse it. You didn't seek it, you didn't choose it, but it's up to you to use it. You're going to suffer if you lose it. You're going to give an account if you abuse it. A tiny little minute, which is 60 seconds, but eternity is in it. You don't have 1 second more than the person that's sitting next to you. Every single one of us only has 24 hours in a day. No one has 27 hours, no one has 18 hours. All of us has 86,400 seconds that God expects us to invest in every day. If you take 1 second out of Monday and bring it into Tuesday, you have wasted Monday. So how can you outlive your life if all that you are could be put in a casket, or your living has been in vain? If all that you are can only be put 6 feet under in the ground, you have missed what life is all about. Most people live and die and never ask why. And the greatest days of our lives is the day we were born. But the greater day than that is the day we find out why we were born. In our scripture, 1 Samuel, and I didn't read that today, but it says 20:3, and David sware moreover and said, Thy father certainly knoweth that I have found grace in thine eyes. And he hath, let not Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly as the Lord liveth, and as the soul liveth, there is but a step between me and death. The definition of death is inevitable, a universal process that eventually occurs in all living organisms. Many of us, or all of us, go through, and I won't say all, because some people don't live long enough. As you see out in the news and everything today, we got 6-year-olds that don't make it to adulthood. We got 5-year-olds in strollers that's getting hit by cars. So some of us make it, but most of us go through 7 stages of that human moves through during our lifespan. One is infancy, early childhood, middle childhood, adolescence, early adulthood, and then we finish up with kind of a middle adulthood, which I said many of us don't get that far anymore. The Bible teaches us that if Jesus tarries, every one of us must go through the experience called death. We know this fact from daily observation. Every day we hear of the invasion that death makes. Every newspaper carries an obituary column. Every funeral director is kept busy. Graves are constantly being opened in all the cemeteries. If you haven't been by a cemetery for a long time, and maybe there was just a few little stones up there, and after a while when you go back, honey, it's full and running over. So death stalks the land. Disease kills in spite of the advance of modern medicine. Accidents of all kinds rob us of our friends and loved ones. And of course, as I said this week, there's been 8 deaths of me just hearing of people, friends, family members that I know of that have lost someone. Yeah. And of course, this week we lost our brother Adrian Singleton. Not knowing death is certain, would it not be to our advantage to get ready for it by putting all of our trust in Jesus Christ? Hebrews 9:27 is appointed unto man once to die, and after death is the judgment. We must all go to the judgment and stand before God. Today we aren't just speaking about one person, we're speaking about all of those. And as I'm concluding part of the 8 that I've heard about, including Brother Adrian, who has finished their course of life. But you and we, the family and friends that hear, my voice and hear the voices of these that once walked among us, we must do what they have already done. Yes. It used to be said, live today and go on tomorrow. But now it's live today and go on today. Death is never welcome. There's a man by the name of Sidney Lanier. He was one of the great Southern poets, and he laid dying, and he said that he had 1,000 unknown songs in his heart. And when you and I come to the end of the way, there will be many things unfinished also, things that must forever go undone. And we find that Brother Adrian here, we find that he can't come back to Liberty Baptist and set up the equipment anymore. He can't come to Still Memorial and set up the equipment here anymore. Things that were unfinished. He didn't get a chance maybe to tell Sister Charnel, Brother Haber, how to actually put everything together and do everything like he did. It's not so much it wasn't time, but he didn't know that there wouldn't be a time to come back. Also, he can't go back to the classroom and be the teacher that he was. The students on Monday of this past week looked for him. Come back, or my teacher won't be coming back anymore. And then also to be able to go to Kane University and to take one more class or to finish up going into his midterms and getting ready to finish up another semester. He won't be able to do that anymore. And to the friends and those that are here, he won't be able to text or call anymore to let you know I'm going to be a little late, or how you doing today, man, and how's things going with you. Can't do that anymore. But there are a few who have been sick so long and who have suffered so much that death many times comes and becomes as a release for those who have lingering illnesses like cancers. But to most of us, death is never welcome, even though it surprises us in the midst of life's activities. Yes. We must remember that it is coming and we must be ready for it. Oh, yes. We sing about death. When I see Jesus. We sing about going up yonder and also sweeping through the city. Yeah. We preach about death. Yeah. Right. Cancel my appointment can be one thing or subject. Now you know how I felt. Or save a seat for me. Or when the roll is called. Yeah. These are some of the subjects and themes that people preach on at eulogies and tell about the life and legacy of many people. But we find that we talk about it all the time. But still, when it happens, it still becomes a mystery. We find that there is no guarantee against things that happen suddenly. There may be a sudden storm, or even a divorce, or even a long-term disability, personal injuries, unemployment, and death. It has been a mistaken notion if a person is a faithful follower of Jesus, he or she will be protected from the troubles of life. And whoever thinks that, God, we have a problem. Because just because you know Jesus, the saints have trouble. Yes. The saints get sick. The saints go through situations. But the thing is, God carries us through them all. We have heard of people in the Bible who have served God and have had their troubles as well as their death. Joseph was sold by his brothers and put in prison for a lie that Potiphar's wife told on him. Jacob lost everything he had, 10 children, his wife, cattle, sheep, donkeys, but never charged God foolishly. Paul had an affliction that plagued him most of his life, and mostly all the original disciples were martyred. Persons who and a martyr means persons who voluntarily suffer the death as penalty to renounce a religion. Yes. Peter was crucified upside down. I'm talking about people that serve God. Yeah. I'm talking about those who walk right with him. So now they walked with him on a daily basis, and we didn't really walk with him. We just have faith to believe him. And they're going through some of the things I'm getting ready to say. What do you think we're going to go through? We may not go through these types of persecutions because we have freedom of speech and freedom of religion. But the thing is, Peter was crucified, turned upside down. James was beheaded and was stabbed with a sword. These are people that suffered for Christ. John the Baptist was beheaded. Andrew was martyred by crucifixion. Philip was martyred. Judas committed suicide. And Matthew was killed with the sword. Thomas was killed with a spear. And the list of the disciples goes on and on. So no matter what all the disciples did in life, there came a time that it was done for the last time. We are living in the last days. And if we watch the news, we may wonder what the world is coming to. Yes. Tragic things happening so suddenly and unexpected that no human can predict what tomorrow will bring. And I heard a story of a pastor, and he basically was at a conference. And this pastor was driving down the street, and all of a sudden, there was an accident. And the car was, I would say, demolished. The car was smashed in like a can, and the pastor was inside. And from this conference was another pastor who was also on his way home and everything, and he was coming, and he saw the car of the pastor who had been at the conference with him, and he saw how demolished it was. And he got out of his car, and of course, you know, he running toward that particular car, and the police are trying to hold him back. But he says, God told me to come to that car, and I have to go there, and I have to pray. But prior to that, the EMTs, the police, everyone came there, and they found out that the pastor had died. And at this time, when the other pastor comes and he sees the white sheet over the car, and he's saying to God, God, why do you want me to go and pray? They've already more or less told us by the actions that this man has died, or someone has died in the car. But he said, I had to do what God told me to do. I have to still go and see. And he climbed through the hatchback part of the car, and he came in to the seats that were there, and he saw the pastor there, bleeding and everything going on. And what he ended up doing was he just said a word of prayer, which is what God had informed him to do. He didn't go there trying to save his life, because they had already told him, he gone. Ain't no sense in you even coming to pray. But the power of prayer is so great. And this pastor knew what God could do. And so he ended up going in and praying for the pastor in distress. And after a while, and he began to pray, the pastor began to move a little bit. And he couldn't move much because he was in so much pain. And he couldn't do too much because he was in so much pain. But in the midst of this prayer going on, this pastor was carried away into what we would call heaven, or the gates, I want to say, of heaven. And when he got there in his subconscious, he began to see this beautiful place and all the beautiful colors and flowers and everything there. But there was a gate that was there, and he was looking forward to going into the gate, because he realized as a pastor what I've been preaching about and what I've been singing about and what we've been coming to church all about has now getting ready to take place, and the Lord is getting ready to carry me home, and I'm getting ready to go where I don't have no more trouble, and I don't have no more bills, and I won't have no more disappointments, and no more tears, and no more death. He realized I've lived this life as a pastor and a servant of God, that I'm getting ready to go home to be with God. Yeah. But in the midst of this pastor, the other pastor that's in there praying and, you know, talking to this man and talking about him and saying things that God has given him to say, all of a sudden, he moves, which means he no longer can go to the gates of heaven. And he wonders, why, Lord? I've worked for you. I've served you. It's my time. My time to go. I'm ready to go. If you want me to come, I'm ready to go. But he found out there was more work for him to do. Yes. And many times you can get right at the point of death, and they can say it's all over, finished. But this pastor prayed him back, because God knew it wasn't time for him yet. So this man lived a little bit longer, did a little more work for God. Wasn't able to go home to be with the Lord yet. Then we find another story. This story was a man by the name of George. George worked in the seed mill. In the building that he was in, they had already told George and all the employees, the building that you're in is not in a safe condition. The roof may one day cave in. And so these men began to continue to work because, of course, their boss was, oh, we'll patch the roof up and it'll be fine. And after a while, everything will be fine. But one day, George stayed a little bit later for work and finishing up some work, and the ceiling all of a sudden fell in and collapsed, and it fell on George. And George fell on the floor unconscious and it was basically presumed dead. His co-workers outside of this building began to look for him, calling George, George, where you at? George, we're looking for you, so on and so forth, but they couldn't find him. And then they went to the job and they found George lying on the floor. But we find, just like the other man, the pastor that I told you about, George subconscious went to another place. George found his outer body experience that he was in a boat in a very, very dark place. There was no light. This boat is going down the water on the river, and all of a sudden in front of him appears a man in black, about 7 feet tall. And here we find that this man told him to come with me. And this boat is still moving. Nobody has to use those paddles and all that. The boat is moving. And then what happened is soon they arrived at this mountain. And George could hear the sounds from the mountain. And there was a cave, and behind the mountain he could hear hollering and screaming. He could hear crying, and people were saying, get me out of here. I'm in hell. And George began to hear those dreadful sounds. He began to hear that dungeon, as we would call sound, that people were in hell. And while he was still experiencing that outer body experience, these two men saw George laying on the ground at the job. And one was at the head and one was at the foot, and they picked him up. And when they picked him up, one of them stumbled by mistake on something in that building, because I told you it could collapse. And he hit his head on the ground. And when he hit his head again, he also appeared at an unconscious situation. So here we're talking about two men. One who was a pastor who lived a life for God. And here we're talking about George, who was taken to a place, who decided, I don't need God right now, and that I got time, and I don't know when he's going to come for me, but I'm not ready yet to get my life together. But we all have an appointment with death. For the child of God, death is a transportation. When death carries us from this side to the other side. But here we find in our scripture text today, in Luke 16:22 and 31, we find there was a rich ruler here. And the Bible says they didn't have a name for him, but there was a man by the name of Lazarus. And the rich ruler, he had so much. He had a wonderful, I would say a mansion if he was in our day, that he had everything that he needed. He had servants, he had food, he had everything. But Lazarus didn't have anything. And here we find that Lazarus was sitting at the rich man's table, and he was waiting for the crumbs. It's like you eating a piece of bread that's crumbled up, and the crumbs would fall down, and Lazarus would be waiting to receive some of the crumbs that would fall from the rich man's table. But the rich man would never offer Lazarus, he would never offer him a meal at his table. Lazarus wasn't good enough. He didn't look good enough. He's like some people out here in the streets that you'll look at him and you'll say, I ain't giving you no dollar, because all you want is to buy some drugs. Or somebody out here that maybe don't dress like you dress, or somebody out here who not able to carry themselves in the manner that you expect them to carry. They don't smell like you smell, and they don't look like you look. Hair all over their head, didn't get a haircut if he's a man, didn't go to the hairdresser as a woman. Their nails ain't done like yours and mine, but they're a person of God anyway, because God made all of us, and you shouldn't look down on nobody unless you're going to go and pick them up. Some of these people, they had jobs just like we did, but they ended up falling on hard times, and they lost their job. We know one of the greatest things that ever happened on this globe was the pandemic. People lost their jobs, people lost their homes, people lost their salaries, so they didn't have. But now we find that Lazarus, he's sitting there waiting on just a few crumbs. My stomach is hurting because I'm hungry, and some of the people out there, their stomachs are hurting. Sometimes you gotta feed them before you can witness to them. You may not want to give them money, but you may have to go buy them a chicken box and feed them, so you can just stand there and talk to them. So Lazarus, he's here now, just wishing and hoping in his heart and mind, will this rich man please give me something to eat? I don't want a whole meal. Just give me a few crumbs. Give me just a little bit to take away the pain that I'm enduring. But the rich man ignored him, wouldn't give anything. Even the dogs, it says, begin to lick Lazarus' sores. He had sores from the crown of his head to the sole of his feet. Don't look down on me, because God can turn this picture around. No matter what I am today, God can turn me around, and I can become a missionary. No matter what I am today, I can become a saint of God. I can become a minister. I was once lost, but now I'm found. Jesus, he picks us up. He turns us around. He places us on a solid ground. He'll make you no longer the beggar, but he'll make you the lender. Here as we go along, both of them died. The rich man died, and Lazarus died. And the rich man opened up his eyes, and he was in hell. But Lazarus was in the bosom of Abraham. Lazarus, he began to enjoy some of the things that he wasn't able to enjoy when he was out sick and begging. But the rich man, everything he had, it was now gone. He didn't have no home, didn't have food and all that, because now he's in hell, and he's lifting up his eyes, and he's singing, I played the fool. I could have got God. I could have helped the beggar, but I chose not to do it. There's a choice you have to make. You're going to serve God, or you're going to serve the devil. There's no in between, because when it comes down, there's no hurts behind the hurts. There's no money. There's nobody that has ever took all that they have behind the hurts. It don't go in the ground with you, but after a while, you leave it to whoever that beneficiary is. It could be your children, the ones that treat you wrong, but they gonna get everything. Your mother, your father, who you didn't get along with, they gonna get everything. Or even those that you love them. But either way, you gonna leave it here. The rich man, he left everything he had. And there comes a time when you're gonna stand before God, and the books will be open, and another book will be open. Here in this story, it was told this rich man, he was there this. Lazarus can have as much food as he wants because he's at Jesus' table. He's at the table that Jesus is preparing for the saints of God. He's in a mansion. Lazarus, he was out on the street. He was out there begging crumbs. But now I got everything. And most of all, the main thing, I got Jesus.